I'm 70, and here's why I don't visit relatives anymore. I am 70 years old, and for many years, visiting relatives was something I considered a duty, a tradition, and a fundamental part of life. Growing up, family gatherings were frequent and emphasized as essential. Birthdays, holidays, and countless Sunday dinners filled my calendar, and I participated because that was what everyone did. But as the years passed, I began to feel differently. What once felt like a meaningful connection started to feel like an obligation I could no longer justify. Now, I no longer visit relatives, and this choice has made me happier and more at peace with myself. It was not an easy decision at first, but it was a necessary one. For decades, I attended gatherings and events out of a sense of duty. The expectation that family ties must be upheld above all else had been ingrained in me since childhood. However, I started noticing patterns that were hard to ignore. Many of these visits revolved around surface-level conversations and endless comparisons. It became clear that some relatives were more interested in boasting about their latest achievements or gossiping about others than fostering genuine relationships. Research from the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology suggests that superficial relationships can negatively impact mental health. I realized that the time and energy spent in these environments were not adding value to my life. Instead, they often left me feeling drained and questioning the purpose of maintaining these interactions. Another significant factor that influenced my decision to stop visiting relatives was the realization that many of these gatherings felt more like staged performances than genuine opportunities for connection. Over time, it became clear that certain family members were more focused on maintaining appearances and passing judgment than on fostering an environment where meaningful and heartfelt discussions could take place. This created an atmosphere that felt more stifling than supportive. On more than one occasion, I found myself hesitating to share anything personal for fear of it being misinterpreted or mishandled. The very spaces that were supposed to be a haven for vulnerability often felt like arenas for scrutiny instead. There was one particular experience that left a lasting impression on me and underscored the fragile trust within these relationships. During a particularly challenging period in my life, I confided in a relative about a health scare that had been weighing heavily on my mind. I had hoped for understanding, empathy, and perhaps even a sense of comfort. Instead, I later discovered that this deeply personal matter had become a topic of casual gossip among other family members. The details of my struggle, which I had shared in confidence, were dissected and discussed as though they were nothing more than a fleeting piece of entertainment. This betrayal stung deeply and served as a painful reminder that not everyone who shares your bloodline shares your values. That incident was a turning point for me, as it forced me to reassess the nature of these relationships and the level of trust one was placing in them. Trust, as studies have consistently shown, is a cornerstone of healthy and meaningful relationships. Without trust, interactions can feel hollow, leaving one to question the very foundation of the connection. According to research published in the Journal of Family Psychology, trust and mutual respect are critical for building strong familial bonds. When these elements are absent, relationships can not only feel empty but also become emotionally taxing. For me, the absence of trust created a dynamic that was far from nurturing or fulfilling. As I reflected on these experiences, I began to understand that these interactions were not only emotionally unfulfilling but also actively harmful to my well-being. The constant need to monitor my words and guard my feelings drained me. Instead of leaving family gatherings feeling uplifted or supported, I often left feeling exposed and uneasy. The very act of participating in these events started to feel like an exercise in endurance rather than an opportunity for connection. Over time, I realized that it was not just one isolated incident but a recurring pattern that pointed to a deeper issue within these relationships. The decision to stop visiting relatives was not an impulsive one. It was a choice grounded in years of reflection and a growing awareness of how these interactions were affecting me. By stepping away from these gatherings, I was able to protect my emotional health and prioritize relationships that were built on trust and authenticity. This decision, while difficult, ultimately allowed me to reclaim my peace and focus on connections that truly mattered. The financial and logistical burden of frequent family visits was another significant factor that influenced my decision to step back from these gatherings. Traveling long distances, often with little notice, required not only time but also considerable expenses. Costs for fuel, flights, and accommodations quickly added up. Then there was the expectation of bringing gifts or contributing to meals, which became an unspoken rule at nearly every event. While these gestures might seem small on the surface, they began to feel like a constant drain on my resources and energy. Hosting gatherings in return only compounded the issue. The effort involved in cleaning, cooking, and ensuring everyone felt comfortable left me physically and mentally exhausted, often for days afterward. At 70 years old, I have come to appreciate the value of simplicity and intentional living. My priorities have shifted. I now focus on nurturing a life that feels fulfilling and sustainable rather than one that revolves around meeting the expectations of others. The time and energy I used to spend preparing for and attending family events are now dedicated to pursuits that genuinely bring me joy. Hobbies like gardening, reading, and painting have become sources of peace and creativity. I have also cultivated friendships with people who share my interests and values, creating connections that feel both supportive and enriching. Self-care has taken center stage in my life, whether through daily walks, quiet mornings with tea, or simply embracing the freedom to do nothing at all when I choose. The liberation I have found in stepping away from these obligations has been transformative. According to a study published in the American Journal of Geriatric Psychiatry, engaging in meaningful leisure activities can significantly enhance life satisfaction for older adults. This resonates deeply with my own experiences. By reallocating my time and energy toward activities that align with my passions and well-being, I have found a profound sense of contentment. This change has not only improved my physical health, but also given me a renewed appreciation for the present moment. While the decision to limit family visits was not easy, it was necessary for my peace of mind and quality of life. I no longer feel burdened by the constant cycle of logistical challenges and financial stress. Instead, I feel empowered to prioritize what truly matters to me, living each day with intention and joy. Perhaps the most challenging aspect of this decision was navigating the guilt and judgment that inevitably came with it. Family members were quick to question my absence at gatherings, often making pointed remarks about how family should always come first. Some even went so far as to imply that I was neglecting my responsibilities or betraying familial bonds. These comments weighed heavily on me in the beginning. I carried a deep sense of guilt, questioning whether I was making the right choice and whether I was being unfair to those who had certain expectations of me. The thought of disappointing loved ones was difficult to reconcile with my growing need for peace and personal well-being. Over time, I began to recognize that much of this guilt stemmed from external pressures rather than an honest evaluation of my own needs. Many of my family members' reactions were rooted in their expectations and the societal belief that family obligations should be prioritized above all else. However, these expectations often ignored the emotional and physical toll they placed on individuals, particularly as they age. I had to remind myself that I was not withdrawing out of spite or a lack of love, but rather to preserve my own mental and emotional health. This shift in perspective was both liberating and empowering. It allowed me to see that prioritizing my well-being was not an act of selfishness, but an act of self-respect and self-care. Learning to set boundaries became one of the most transformative decisions of my life. At first, saying no felt foreign and even uncomfortable. I worried about how it might be perceived or whether it would cause irreparable rifts in my relationships. But as I practiced setting these boundaries with kindness and clarity, I found that many people were more understanding than I had anticipated. Those who truly cared about me often respected my decisions, even if they did not entirely agree with them. On the other hand, the individuals who continued to push back or express resentment only reinforced the necessity of these boundaries. It became clear that their responses were more about their own discomfort with change than a reflection of my worth or choices. Reclaiming my time and energy allowed me to focus on what truly mattered. Instead of feeling stretched thin by obligations that no longer served me, I could invest in relationships and activities that brought me genuine joy and fulfillment. I began to value quality over quantity in my connections. The freedom to say no opened up space in my life for meaningful experiences that aligned with my values and needs. Ultimately, this journey taught me that I did not have to sacrifice my well-being to meet the expectations of others. Choosing to prioritize myself was not an act of abandonment, but rather a commitment to living authentically and intentionally. This realization brought me a profound sense of peace and confidence, reminding me that self-respect is the foundation of any healthy relationship, including those with family. The pandemic marked a profound turning point in my life, as it did for countless others. The necessity of social distancing compelled me to reassess how I connect with others and how I prioritize my health and well-being. For years, I had been caught in a cycle of constant family visits, driven by obligations rather than genuine desire. When the pandemic restricted such gatherings, I initially felt a mix of relief and guilt. However, as time passed, I began to notice a surprising sense of lightness and peace in my daily life. Without the pressure to travel, host, or attend endless events, I experienced a newfound freedom that I had not allowed myself in decades. Instead of feeling isolated, I discovered that the absence of these obligations created room for more meaningful connections. I began reaching out to those who truly mattered to me through phone calls and handwritten letters. These interactions, though less frequent than in-person visits, were more heartfelt and authentic. For the first time in years, I felt fully present in my conversations, unburdened by the need to maintain appearances or navigate family dynamics that often left me drained. The depth of these exchanges brought me far more joy than the sheer quantity of visits I had previously endured. This shift aligned with findings from a Harvard University study on adult development, which highlights that the quality of relationships, rather than the frequency of interactions, has a significant impact on overall happiness and health. The study resonated deeply with me, affirming what I was experiencing firsthand. It became clear that fostering meaningful connections did not require constant physical proximity. Instead, it required intentionality and a genuine interest in the well-being of the people I cared about. The pandemic also reinforced the importance of prioritizing my health and safety, both physically and emotionally. The time I once spent preparing for visits or recovering from the stress of strained family dynamics was now dedicated to activities that nourished my soul. I read books, tended to my garden, and spent quiet moments reflecting on what truly mattered. This period of forced stillness was a gift in disguise, allowing me to reevaluate how I wanted to spend my remaining years. Ultimately, the pandemic taught me that stepping away from exhausting obligations did not mean severing connections. Instead, it meant building stronger, more meaningful bonds with the people who genuinely enriched my life. By stepping away from the cycle of visiting relatives, I have created space to cultivate deeper and more meaningful connections with the people who genuinely value me. In doing so, I have shifted my focus to relationships founded on mutual respect and shared interests rather than on obligation or tradition. These friendships are refreshing and uplifting, providing a sense of belonging and understanding that I had longed for but seldom found in certain family dynamics. Conversations are filled with laughter and genuine interest, free from the undercurrents of judgment or competition that sometimes accompanied family interactions. These bonds have not only enriched my life, but also reaffirmed my belief that quality outweighs quantity when it comes to meaningful relationships. This change has also afforded me the time and freedom to invest in my personal growth and passions, areas of life I often neglected when my schedule was dominated by family obligations. I have rediscovered the joy of gardening, an activity that brings me peace and a connection to nature. Planting seeds, nurturing them, and watching them flourish has become a metaphor for my own life, a reminder that with care and attention, it is possible to grow something beautiful. Painting has also re-entered my life as a creative outlet that allows me to express emotions and ideas I cannot put into words. These moments of artistic exploration have been therapeutic, providing both a challenge and a source of fulfillment. Beyond my personal pursuits, I have found immense satisfaction in volunteering within my community. Whether it is helping at a local food bank or mentoring young people, these activities give me a sense of purpose that extends beyond myself. Contributing to the well-being of others has not only strengthened my sense of identity but also deepened my appreciation for the interconnectedness of life. It is a stark contrast to the draining dynamics I often encountered with certain relatives, where interactions felt transactional rather than heartfelt. This shift has filled my days with joy and purpose, proving that stepping back from unfulfilling obligations can lead to a richer, more satisfying life. The time I once spent navigating family drama is now devoted to pursuits that bring me genuine happiness and a sense of accomplishment. Through this journey, I have learned that prioritizing my well-being does not mean turning my back on relationships. Instead, it means choosing connections and activities that truly nourish my spirit. Letting go of traditional family obligations has given me the space to confront and address unresolved feelings and experiences that had lingered for years. Family relationships are often a mix of love, loyalty, and unspoken grievances, and my own history was no exception. For decades, I carried the emotional weight of misunderstandings, unfulfilled expectations, and moments of hurt that were never fully addressed. The constant cycle of gatherings and interactions left little room for introspection or healing. By stepping away from the pressure to engage continuously, I created the time and emotional bandwidth necessary to process these complexities in a way that brought me peace. This newfound clarity has been transformative, allowing me to see my family dynamics from a fresh perspective. I began to understand that some patterns were not personal but rooted in generational behaviors and unspoken norms. Acknowledging this helped me separate my self-worth from the actions and attitudes of others. For the first time, I could approach these memories without the sting of blame or resentment clouding my judgment. This clarity has not only been a source of relief, but has also brought a sense of closure I once believed was unattainable. Forgiveness has been a cornerstone of this journey. Initially, it felt like an insurmountable task. How could I forgive certain words or actions that had caused me pain? Yet, as I delved deeper, I realized that forgiveness was not about condoning hurtful behavior, but about releasing myself from its grip. I chose to forgive, not for their sake, but for mine. In doing so, I unburdened myself from the weight of grudges that had long drained my energy and joy. Self-forgiveness was equally essential. I stopped berating myself for past decisions and instead embraced the lessons they taught me. This emotional shift has allowed me to look forward to the future with hope and optimism rather than being tethered to the past. Without the pressure of unresolved emotions weighing me down, I feel lighter and more at peace. Life has become a canvas where I can paint new experiences and relationships that align with my values and bring genuine happiness. Letting go of these traditional obligations was not an act of abandoning my family, but a step toward reclaiming my own sense of freedom and fulfillment. I am not suggesting that everyone should stop visiting their relatives. For many, family relationships are a profound source of love, support, and joy. These connections can provide a foundation of stability and belonging that enriches life in countless ways. However, my decision was rooted in a deeply personal realization about what I needed to prioritize for my own well-being. It was about making a conscious choice to embrace authenticity over obligation. I had to acknowledge that while relationships can be a beautiful part of life, they should also be reciprocal and enriching. They should not feel like one-sided commitments or sources of constant emotional and physical exhaustion. Life has taught me that relationships thrive on mutual respect and understanding. A healthy bond is one where both parties give and receive in equal measure, offering support and care without strings attached. When relationships become imbalanced, they can erode our sense of self and leave us feeling depleted. This understanding led me to re-examine the dynamics I had with some relatives. I realized that continuing to engage out of a sense of duty, rather than genuine connection, was neither fair to them nor healthy for me. At 70, I have come to appreciate the value of living in alignment with my own values and needs. Time feels more precious now, and I am determined to spend it in ways that truly matter. This means focusing on experiences and relationships that bring me joy, peace, and fulfillment. Whether it is nurturing my friendships, exploring hobbies, or simply enjoying quiet moments of reflection, these choices have brought a sense of contentment I had long been missing. I understand that stepping away from traditional expectations can invite judgment or misunderstanding. Yet, I have found that staying true to myself has been far more rewarding than trying to meet others' expectations. Life is too short to be spent fulfilling obligations that do not resonate with your heart. I am proud of the path I have chosen, and I have no regrets. This decision was not about abandoning family, but about reclaiming my time and energy for the things that genuinely nourish my spirit. For me, this has been the key to feeling truly at peace. If there is one thing I hope others can take away from my story, it is the importance of listening to your own heart and making choices that honor your happiness. It is never too late to reevaluate your relationships and create a life that truly reflects who you are. Whether it is spending more time with loved ones, pursuing your passions, or simply enjoying your own company, the key is to live authentically and unapologetically. That is the lesson I have learned, and it has made all the difference.